Welcome to Life with Legends. I'm Justin Bell, and we are going to talk with David Hobbs. A few weeks ago, I met up with David at his lovely home in Florida and really had a wonderful couple of days visit. Now, most of you know Hobbo for his great sense of humor, showcased through his most excellent TV hosting career, where he became the voice of Formula One for so many years, amongst other things. But to focus on that alone doesn't really do justice to his racing success. He raced everything. Sports cars, Indy Cars, IMSA, Can-Am, and even Formula One. But he definitely stood out in the Formula 5000 ranks, winning the championship in 1971, as well as a Trans Am championship a few years later. He never won the big prize at the Le Mans 24 Hour, despite taking the flag 20 times, and he got close to it, I think about 8 times to winning. He will remind me of that during the interview. Anyway, as much as anything, David is universally loved, and just getting the chance to sit down and hear the stories was a real treat for me, as I hope it is for you. Thank you for having me in your house.
Well, thank you for coming. I'm glad that Andrew and Meg were here too to see Angar.
I know.
So you'll see him later.
I can't wait. I know. I haven't seen you guys in Florida ever.
No.
Other than the
Last
track.
time I saw you was at our house in Elkhart Lake.
I missed it last year. Not going to. It's funny. Out of all the races on the calendar, not going to that one was particularly galling. Because everybody likes going to Road America, don't they?
Yeah. Well, it's such a great place in the summer.
Yeah.
You don't want to be there now.
No.
Oh shit!
That's why you migrate like a little bird.
The track's all covered in snow and looks grey and drab.
Sometimes they post like videos, like clips on social media from those tracks, and everyone's sliding around on the snow, and I like it.
The town is so empty.
Is it?
Well, there's a few snowbirds live there like us, but it's just everything's very quiet. The restaurants, the Paddock Club, Lake Street Cafe, they still are open most days of the week, and they have a good crowd in there. But
the rest of it's just gone dead. It is seasonal.
Just nothing to do there.
Nothing to do.
Nothing to do.
I bought your book.
Oh, did you?
Mm-hmm.
Well done.
Well, it was a bit of a saga because I had to wait for the big delivery truck to arrive and 2 guys to get out to carry the book on a dolly into my house and put it into place because it's so flipping heavy.
It's not that heavy.
It's quite a book though, isn't it? God, do you know what, when I read it, which I did, I thought I wish I'd read it years ago because I would have shown you a lot more respect over the years.
Yeah.
It's good, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it's a bit of an eye-opener for a lot of people. Who was I give one to? I sold one to somebody. And I think it was a woman. She said, I had no idea you'd done so much.
No.
So
I had no idea.
I said, well, until I read it again, I'd forgotten I'd done so much myself.
I think I love the way Sam Posey was at his finest on the introduction. But when he heard you were going to do a book, he thought it would be full of lots of pictures and not very big.
A very short
book. It was, oh God, I loved it. I thought it was really good.
Yeah.
How's Sam?
Sam is, I'm terrible. I haven't kept up with it very much, but from what I hear, from people who have, like Judy Stropers, he's doing okay, but he's not great.
No.
But because old Sam and I have known each other now since 1969, when I first came over to do Formula 5000, and raced against him, and a whole bunch of other guys, and he and I have been at it verbally ever since. To start with, we kind of meant it, but after a few weeks, it was all just put on really. And of course, we worked with Rod Campbell in 70 and 71 when he ran the promo for the L&M series, and he only took us two. He didn't take anybody else anywhere. We went everywhere. We went to everywhere the race was where we were there. And he got us on all these TV stations, and every interviewer was a stick and ball guy. They couldn't get racing at all. Except when I did the Indy 500 in 71, suddenly I was a persona grata as opposed to a non-grata, because, oh my God, you really are a racing driver. You did the Indy 500. Changed everything. But Sam and I have been at it ever since then, and we both went on the PA at places like Laguna Seca, and we'd be on for about 20 minutes each, and just taking the mickey out of each other and denigrating the other one. And it would be 2017, I think. I was doing the practice I went to it with NBC. We went to the practice in Spain, Formula One practice in Spain, and so I missed Friday at Amelia Island, and Sam was on a forum on the Friday. I was flying across the Atlantic, and as soon as I got there, somebody said, "You just should have heard Sam today. Somebody asked him about something about you," and because he said Sam can't really sit up now, he kind of lolls over and falls over. And he said, "Well, now I'm like this in this shape," he said. "Now I know how David Hobbs felt all his life." I mean, I wasn't even there.
You weren't even there to be...
But he schemes up these things all the time. So
it was really good to... I saw him... I actually found a photograph of him the other day at Amelia Island, and I was like, oh, that's great. It's great just to have those moments with him, and I wish I'd been doing this when he was at the top of his game, because he just would have been one of those guys to have talked to. But if you do get him, you can still have a great conversation with him if you get...
His talking is a bit difficult.
Yeah.
But
the words that come out are like razors. It's like, that's what I noticed.
And he still writes stuff for some of the promos of races. And he can write it, and his stuff is just amazing. It's brilliant. I mean, he comes from a very well-off family, and he was very well educated. Went to the Rhode Island School of Design, and he went to a very Hotchkiss primary school, which is one of the best in America. So he's got a tremendous amount of history and a tremendous amount of knowledge, and of course his English is absolutely impeccable. Yeah, I mean, he knows more words in the English vocabulary than I do by a long way.
Do you remember when he was doing the IMSA broadcast for Daytona or Sebring? He'd do those eloquent video introductions, and you'd just sit there going, what? Yeah. You know, and they'd play them to us before we were going on air, and you're like, well, how am I supposed to follow that? That was just like, God, he's good.
Some of his Formula One intros were incredible. He did one on Alonso. It must have been before Singapore or Malaysia, probably. And our guy, the video guy that he worked with, was also amazing. You know, because Sam would write the script, and then this guy would put the video. And I mean, it was just impeccable work, great work. Yeah. And if we hadn't been a cable, you know, like, I'm sure that we'd have got Emmys for that, because Sam's words were just so good and so pertinent. And he had a different story for every race, you know, whether it was Malaya or whether we were in Singapore or Australia. He always had the right words for the right race and the right people at the time, whoever were at the top at the time. So.
When I read the book, I didn't realize that your dad was such a intelligent, clever, cool bloke, wasn't he? I mean, he...
And you found that surprising, having known me, I suppose.
Well, I did, because exactly. And then when you said it yourself, you know, after my something like my Sterling exam results, or, you know, I couldn't go to college, so I went into an apprenticeship. Yeah. I was thinking that must have been a proud moment for him. Although he did want you to be an apprentice, I guess. I mean, he got you the job.
Well, yeah, Dad was very, very laid back, incredibly laid back and cool Australian. But he is still regarded by people in the automobile engineering world as a bit of a genius, because he had a good education, and he went to university in Adelaide, which is where he was from, and his dad was a fruit grower. His father and his grandfather had a fruit farm up in a place called Paradise, which is on the north side of Adelaide. And they were a well-known family. But of course, Dad he had 5 brothers and 3 sisters, and the brothers all went into the fruit farm business or farmed themselves. But Dad was a quirky misfit right from the word go. I mean, he was always inventing things. Like he invented like an orange grader and stuff like that when he was about 15 or 16. And when he was 18, he made an aeroplane,
I saw that, yeah.
which was a monoplane, which back in 1916, which is how old he was then,
Yeah.
everybody thought he was nuts. They said, well, all planes got 2 wings, one wing won't cut it, Luckily, he only had a JAP motorcycle engine to put in it. So he taxied it around a bit, but he never actually took off, which was probably a good job. And then he got this bee in his bonnet about crash boxes, which all cars in those days had those crash boxes, not synchromesh. Dreadful things to use. And he thought, these are just hopeless. And if this car thing becomes a big deal, which it probably won't, but it might do, it might be that everybody's got a car one of these days. Unlikely, but possible. He said the way to go is going to be some sort of shift gears automatically. So he started working on automatic transmission when he was about 19, and came up with some pretty good ideas. And he changed his philosophy of how it should be done over the years. But a group of Australian businessmen sent him and Mum and their daughter off to England in 1929 to develop the gearbox, because as far as the Australians were concerned, England was home, and England was where the world was, the car
central
industry.
bit.
Yeah. I mean, America was churning out Model Ts and things like that by the million, but they were really only selling them domestically until they did the first transplants. Ford put a factory in England, General Motors put a factory in England, then they went to South Africa, then they went to Australia. But England was regarded as home for Dad, so he went to live at a place called Leamington near Coventry, which is the heart of the industry at the time, and finally came up with his ultimate gearbox, which is the one I raced.
And there's a picture of it at the trade show, isn't there? With
Sterling Moss.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Because Sterling had one in his Elite.
Jeez.
And personal Elite, because to cut a long story short, he had spent years and years developing this gearbox, and he had a patron in England who had been found by these Australian businessmen in the first place. And this guy was a Major Ball, who was on the board of Alcan, which is an aluminium company. And he had really basically supported Dad. Then they sold a lot of prototypes. They sold prototypes to just about everybody you could think of. Austin, Morris, Jaguar, BMW, Borgward, Riley, Armstrong Siddeley, you name it. And they all loved it, but the problem was getting it made in production.
Yeah.
They didn't want to make it. They wanted Dad to make it. Well, Dad didn't have enough. They didn't have capital for that sort of expansion. And he did a lot of work with BSA and Daimler. And the gearbox basically was a 4-speed, friction clutch, hydraulically operated, so you had no power loss through the fluid drive, which all automatics did. So it was very, very efficient. And I raced it in Mum's Morris Oxford.
I was looking at that, yeah.
And that was just, Dad and Mum were so, they were both, as I say.
Did they like it? Did they like you racing?
They didn't mind one way or the other. Mum just said, be careful, Dave, mate. It's a bit dangerous out there. But I was driving like a maniac on the road anyway. So I thought, well, I might as well drive like a maniac on the track.
Yeah.
And of course, in those days, it cost me like £5 for a license with the RAC. The entry fee for a race would be about £2, 10 at 6. And that's all. And you had to join a club, which would be about another £5. So I joined the BRSCC, and because they were always invited to these club events, and that's how it started. And
there was the barrier to entry was so low, so you just went and did it. But also, don't you think that you guys, I talked about it with Dad, you weren't doing it thinking it was going to lead to being David Hobbs driving at Le Mans. You just did it for a bit of a laugh, right? And to get, as you say, drive fast on the track. No cops.
No cops at all. Of course, the thing kept breaking. The engine kept breaking. And I got towed back from Snetterton after my first race when it blew a big end. And then a friend of mine, Bill Pinkney, had a Healy Silverstone, which is not to be confused with an Austin Healy. This is pre-Austin Healy. Okay. This is a Healy Silverstone, which is with cycle-type wings. And it was a pretty fast car.
Is that the one you rolled?
No, that was an XK140.
Oh, that was an XK. Because that was a good job you did on that.
I did a very good job. Yeah. Drove it home.
Did you?
Absolutely. Me and Mags.
Special bonding moment that must. So, darling, does this racing thing really? Is it worth it?
Well, they were such fun, those club events. You know, our friend Tony Barrett always used to come, who I'd been to school with for 10 years. We just had fun, and Margaret's friend Jane, who became our bridesmaid eventually, she used to come along, and we'd go to the pub on the way home from the races and all that sort of stuff. So it was fun, and then eventually Dad decided that the Elite, to buy me the Elite, he'd been bought, some of his shares were paid for by Westinghouse Brake and Signal. They built a factory in Manchester to make the thing for Ford. Unfortunately, that all unwound right at the last minute, and I'm not sure to this day what the hell happened, but it sounded like palms being greased to me somewhere along the line. Anyway, we lost the job. But I raced at Elite, and it was very successful because we did our first international race in Germany at the Nürburgring 1000 Ks.
What was that like when you turn up there? Because you've been having fun at Alton Park and Truxton and places like that, and then you go to the Nürburgring. Were you like, oh, this was...
Well, of course, the Nürburgring then was just like the Nürburgring pre-war.
Yeah.
So the pit, the paddock, was basically like an old stable. It was just a great big square with these big old buildings around it, like stables, and they were that was your garage. And of course, it was cobbled. I mean, hardly the surface that modern race engineers desire to set the car up, you know, all that.
So you're trying to do corner weights, wondering.
But you didn't. Well, we
didn't do that then.
We didn't do corner weights.
At least get the wheel straight.
Yeah, you just made sure it got a bit of toe in.
Yeah. And
that was about it, really. The week before at Brands Hatch, I had won the GT race for cars up to 1500cc, and I beat a guy called Les Lesson, who was a very well-known English driver, and he also had an Elite. And before the race at Brands, he said, "What the bloody hell are you thinking about? What are you doing racing an automatic transmission?" He said, "They're hopeless." I said, "Yeah, but this one's a bit different, Les. It's got 4 speeds and it doesn't have much power, has virtually no power loss." Well, it was a load of crap, innit? So anyway, I won the race. So we get to the Nürburgring and we unload and put the car in our allotted garage, and it's all very Germanic. All the signs, of course, are written in German. And then over the tannoy comes, "Achtung, Fahrerlager, Herr Hobbs, bitte, please. Herr Hobbs, come to the office."
Already.
I thought, oh, shit, what the fuck's that about? So I go off to the office and, "Herr Hobbs, we believe your car has an automatische Getriebe, yeah?" And I said, "Do you mean an automatic gearbox?" He said, yeah. And I said, "It has." He said, "This is not homologated. And one of your competitors has pointed this out to us, that this car has an automatic transmission."
Guess which one it was?
Guess which one it was. Lucky old Les. So they said, "So you'll have to go up a class. You could no longer race in the up to 1200cc GT class. You must race in the up to 1600cc sports car class," which had a bunch of RSKs in it, which were obviously, racing cars.
Yeah.
Anyway, in the race, we were doing rather well, and Bill Pinkney drove, the guy who had the Healy Silver, so he drove with me. And on the last lap, the leading RSK dropped it in the ditch, and we won the class. Oh. So there we are on the stand at the Nürburgring, wearing those great big gold leaf things.
Fabulous.
And I had on a check pullover and jeans because it was cold. It had snowed during the race a little bit. And we both sat there playing God Save the Queen at the Nürburgring in Germany. Well, of course, 1961, it's only 15 years after the war. Shoot. So we kind of felt a bit proud at that, and but what was even better was the Germans, of course, are very organised people. So 1100cc GT class had, I don't know, like the winner was £100, and the winner of the 1600cc sports car class was £500. So we walked off there with about 5 times the money we would have won if we'd won the GT class.
So fantastic.
So it was a pretty good feeling. And
is that when you probably went, actually, I'm all right at this?
well, we did at the end of the year because I won 14 out of 18 starts. And a lot of people had started to look at us as a proper...
When you mean us, you mean as in you two together in the car, but you
they
especially?
started to look at me as a serious driver as well. But and Sterling said, well, I thought you only did it to advertise your dad's gearbox. And I said, well, that's a side effect, but really I'm getting to feel now that maybe I should race, because some of the autosports over the year had been very complimentary about my driving. Somebody said at one race at Silverstone, he said he's incredibly smooth and all that. And Lofty England, who was the managing director of Jaguar, who had been the competition manager when Jaguar won Le Mans 55, 56, he was now managing director of Jag. And I was now a Jag apprentice because Daimler, who I'd started with, had gone under and had been bought by Jag. So I was now a Jag apprentice. And Lofty was a bit of a fan of mine because when I'd raced Dad's XK140 the year before, after the debacle of the first race where I rolled it, I had been racing on Michelin X tyres because I didn't know shit about racing tyres. Anyway, I contacted, God, what was his name? He was a lovely young man at Fort Dunlop in Birmingham, Erdington, Birmingham, and got some race tyres for the Jag. I think in those days you had to pay for them, but it was nominal, So I got race tyres and I adjusted the suspension, and a guy from the body shop at Jag bashed it out for me, and then he resprayed it, and he did all this at his home in Daventry. Well, the trouble was he had to do this after he'd worked. So when he resprayed it, which would be in about May, because I crashed it in April, it was a lovely summer evening in England, but of course at that time of year, the nights get cool and a bit damp. Mm-hmm. So when he resprayed it in his shed, it came out matte. It came out as a matte grey. Yeah. Instead of whatever they called it, cobalt blue or something, it came out as matte cobalt blue. But when I say matte, it had a slightly rough finish. It wasn't like the Red Bulls today, which are matte, but it's a proper matte. So, and Lofty was very often the clerk of the course at Silverstone. And my car looked like shit because it's matte. I'd got one headlight. I took one headlight out and put a cold air box to the carbs. Really high tech. And I was on the front. I was on the pole. And as he walked by, hands behind his back, wearing his ratting hat and his British Mac, walked past, just looked at me and said, "Smart turnout, Hobbs." But I had a terrific race against an Aston Martin. It couldn't have been a DB4. It must have been like immediately before the DB4. And he and I passed and repassed, and I won the race. And Lofty was a bit of a fan of mine. And at the end of 61, my apprenticeship ended. I had no qualifications. I didn't pass any of my higher national or ordinary national because I didn't go to Tech much. So I missed.
Because you went racing. So
I went racing. Too busy racing. The elite by then. But Lofty was still a fan. Anyway, I went to see the apprentice supervisor, a chap called Harold Barker. Come in. So I went at Hobbs. David Hobbs. He said, "You are, without doubt, the absolute worst apprentice it's ever been my
displeasure
to be." He said, "You are a disgrace." He said, you're lazy, you don't do any work, you're just absolutely hopeless. God knows what the hell is going to happen to you when you leave here. I said, "Thank you very much, Mr. Barker." Very kind of you.
Thanks. You're going to write me a recommendation.
Yeah, could you write? Yeah.
My reference.
Anyway, the next week, I'm in experimental department where I was working, get a call. The chief of the experimental department comes out, says, he hobbled out, he had a bit of a limp. He said, hey, Hobbs, Mr. Hobbs. He said, Hobbs, Mr. England wants to see you in the office. Mr. England? Ooh, now I really am. Oh dear. He's heard from Harold Barker. So he said, Hobbs, we've got an experimental E-type, D/ED, and I can never remember what the car's called. It was white, and it had been raced by Dan Gurney. And he said, I would like you to take it to Silverstone and do a test run for us. I said, oh, thank you very much, yeah. And he said, yes, let's go down to see Bill Haynes, who was the chief engineer, and Wally Hassan, who was the chief engine guy, and Mike, who was the competition manager. So there's Mike, competition manager, Wally Hassan, chief engine engineer, Bill Haynes, chief engineer, Lofty England, managing director, and D. Hobbs, walking through the office block.
Suddenly no longer the shitty apprentice.
Right past Mr. Barker's office. Hello, Mr. Barker, how are you?
I'm now the test driver. That must have felt quite good.
That's one of the finest moments of my life, was that.
Love it.
Unfortunately, Mike Parks was put in charge of the project, and his girlfriend, whose name escapes me, but she worked for years for Enzo Ferrari as his secretary.
Not Brenda.
It might have been Brenda. Blonde?
No, Brenda's was still his right to the end, so this must have been before Brenda. Could have been.
Yeah.
Don't know.
So off we go to towing this car, and I set off and go. It was a miserable day. It was very grey. It was quite cool. Anyway, I'm hammering around in this car, and I get to Abbey, which in those days was a flat-out left-hander, which I always found a bit, even in the elite, I found it a little bit nerve-wracking because it was flat. Well, it was one of those corners where Sterling was, I say, oh boy, was it flat or was it sort of flat?
Yeah.
Sort of lift his hand a bit, you know. So anyway, I thought I'd better try this flat. And of course, in those days, the testing, when you did testing at Silverstone, you didn't go to pits. You went to that bit of waste ground right on the inside of Abbey Kerr. It was just where there had been a hut or something in the wall, and there was just a bit of old broken down concrete. Anyway, I spun it going through Abbey. But I half spun it and I slid up the road with the brakes locked and came to stop right in front of Mike Parks, who looked at me down his nose. And anyway, it flat spotted the tyres. And of course we hadn't got any spare tyres, so we put it back on the tread and took it back to the factory. So it wasn't all that awe-inspiring. But nevertheless,
it got people's attention.
The end of '61 was a very auspicious year for one D. Hobbs, because I ended my apprenticeship. About 3 months before, conscription had ended, so I was no longer going to go into
on the
national
hook for
service.
that.
I got married to Mags, who I'd already known for 7 years by then. Been going out for 7 years. And Lofty England got me a drive with Peter Berry, who owned a 3.8 Mark II sedan and an E-Type. And I signed on with Castle and got a £500 annual stipend.
What had you made as an apprentice?
I think when I ended up, after 5 years, I was on £10 a week.
So that's a lot of weeks.
When I started, it was £2.17 and 6.
So this 500 was a good wedding present.
Shit, I'll say.
Yeah.
I mean, 500 smackers right up front, put it in the old bank account, was almost unheard of.
Wow.
And a lot of things happened after that. So now we're going into 1962, and my very first race with Peter Berry was the original, 60 years ago, next weekend, Rolex 24, which was the Continental 3-hour. Because Bill France Sr., who had started Daytona, had started NASCAR, obviously, he was very keen on internationalizing Daytona International Speedway. So he wanted to have a sports car race, which has morphed into one of the biggest races now in the world. Which reminds me, I suppose, really, I should have been a guest of honor this year as the only person there.
Who was in that first
I'll
race?
be the only person there this weekend, I bet, who was in that first race.
Maybe they sent it to you, but they just didn't put the right address on.
Well, they probably didn't put the right stamp. Be something like that.
Because they're honouring 6 people next weekend.
Are they?
Yeah. Sorry, just to make it sound
Who
worse.
are they
for you.
honouring?
I don't know. Wayne Taylor. I think they're doing those kind of people. More current drivers. I don't know. Team owners, whatever. Have you been Grand Marshal at Daytona?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was Grand Master in that.
Oh, you were. I remember your speech to the drivers.
Yeah, the Rolex.
Yeah, the Rolex in the order,
Yeah.
where everyone's sitting there. It's quite powerful, that really.
What?
Because the Grand Marshal, for anyone that doesn't know, goes and addresses 200 of the world's, some of them, the world's top drivers, and you're there.
The girl at Rolex at the time said, as far as I'm concerned, you can be Grand Marshal every year.
Yeah,
So
it was good. I remember it.
She says that to everybody, of course. But so I toddled off to the Rolex, but the
3
Continental 3-hour. Well, of course, in those days you couldn't fly to Florida from England, so we flew on a 707, me and Peter Berry and Jimmy Clark, because in the November, Colin Chapman called us at Hobbs Transmission and said, "Look," he said, "can we borrow your Lotus Elite for Jim to drive? There's a new race coming up in London, in Daytona, called a 3-hour." He said, I like the idea of that automatic gearbox of yours. It seems to work pretty well. So could Jimmy drive it in the 3-hour? So obviously we aren't going to say no. And I assume they must have paid to get it there. I don't remember the details now. But anyway, we set the Alito for Jimmy. So we were all on the plane together, Peter Berry, me and Jimmy Clark. And then, of course, when we got to New York, the Elite and the E-Type were taken on by Cunningham. Cunningham was the big racer in America those days, with Jags and a lot of Chevrolet stuff. Anyway, Peter Berry had done a deal with him, and he was going to drive it, take it down on a car transport, take it down to the track. And we drove down, me, Peter Berry, and Jimmy Clark. And we drove down, because there was no I-95 then, it was all Highway 1, Route 1. Yeah. Well, it took us about 2 or 3 days. And I don't remember the details terribly, but I do remember being stopped a number of times, get your hands on the roof and all that crap. All those state troopers with those funny cowboys, those funny bear.
And you guys didn't give a damn. You were used to driving through Europe where you didn't. You didn't brake.
Because we went through all these little towns. We went right down the main street.
So who was in the car with you?
Jimmy Clark and Peter Berry.
Jeez.
And Jimmy I'm getting fed out of this, put my hands on the fucking roof.
And it can go wrong in the south, can't it?
Oh, by God, you're only going to say the wrong thing, you find yourself in a slammer. Anyway, we got to Daytona, and Bill France had a round of welcome parties, and every one of which was videos of, well, not video, film, of course, in those days, of NASCAR races and all the crashes. So we thought, shit, is it a good idea to race this place? I mean, everything was crash, but Bill was very welcoming, and then in the race, and of course everybody was there. I mean, Fireball Roberts was there, Sterling was there, Innes Island was there, Jimmy was there. I mean, all sorts of. It was a big field. And anyway, in the E-Type, I clipped the wall coming onto the banking out of, when you go out of
Turn 6, whatever.
Just tapped it, and it dislodged the fuel pump which is in the tank. It didn't do any damage to the car. You couldn't see a mark on the car, but anyway, the fuel pump stopped working, so I was out. Jimmy in the Elite led by miles. He came in for his one and only fuel stop, and of course the frickin' thing wouldn't start, would it? The starter got fried up. Because there in Daytona, it was a warm day. Wasn't one of those cold days. It was sort of around about 75, 80. And of course at Daytona, this car is absolutely flat. I mean, it had never driven in conditions like that, mostly driving at places like that.
And didn't they have problem? You have the problem with the oil and the sump, banking, and
apparently the exhaust heat from the exhaust pipe fried the starter, so it wouldn't start. But then Bill France asked me Jimmy would like to drive in the Daytona 500, which was coming up the week after. So we both tried a Holman and Moody Galaxy. And I lapped at about 150, something like that. And Jimmy was about the same. And then Fireball Roberts in the Pontiac, he did about 155. But anyway, I did about 150. I thought it was just such a horrible thing. I mean, the brakes, had drum brakes. I mean, you had to start slowing down on the back straight to have any chance at all at stopping.
And if someone spun in front of you, there was no. You didn't stop.
Of course, they had no roll cage worth talking about, all that stuff. Luckily, Dan Gurney was there. He had won the race. He won the 3 hour in the end. That's the one where he stopped on the top of the banking and let it drift over the start-finish line. And he went in a Lotus 19. Anyway, so I was relieved of the responsibility of driving this 500, which I was thankful for. But I did decide to stay on and watch it, which is pretty impressive. And I got to know Fireball. Fireball sort of took to me, and him and his girlfriend Judy, we spent quite a few nights together. And of course, in those days, all those NASCAR drivers used to drink like fish.
Yeah.
And of course, I fell right into that. So we would go to various bars and things around town. I remember one night at about 2 o'clock in the morning, we were coming back down Volusia Avenue, which is now Bill France Boulevard, and it crosses a beach street, which is on the mainland before you cross the bridge onto this island. Anyway, we stopped there at about 2 o'clock in the morning at this deserted traffic light. And the radio was playing in the car, and me and Judy got out of the car. We were dancing around in the middle of the road, of the traffic intersection at 2 o'clock in the morning. And the old Fireball was sitting in the car, yeah. And I was terribly sad when he died soon after that in the most awful death. Of course, burnt to death. So he certainly lived up to his name, Fireball. But, so that was
fun time. Did you just thinking about like Sterling Moss, even when he was?
Oh, he was in the race. He was there.
Yeah.
He
what was it like for you though? Because these were the heroes of the day.
Oh my God!
They were the big stars. So what was it like for you to be there? Did you kind of go, I shouldn't?
Absolutely.
How am I here? I mean, I'm David Hobbs.
I was absolutely doing that. I'm standing there thinking, I can't believe this. This is my first major race as a professional driver, or semi-professional, because I worked for Dad then. When I left, I worked for Dad at the gearbox factory. I'm in a race here with people like, and Sterling Moss is in the same race as I am. In fact, he would be in the same class as me because he had a short wheelbase GT, and I had the E-Type, so we'd have been in the same class. I'm thinking, what the hell am I doing here? And in this island, and people like that, who, of course, I just used to drool over. And Sterling became a friend later on.
Because how old was Sterling then? So
then Sterling
62, early 60s.
Well, I was 21 or 2.
Yeah.
So Sterling would have been about 30, I suppose.
Jeez.
28 or 30. Because it was 61, and he had his
crash 64.
Yes, right.
Yeah. So this was right before.
I mean, he was right at the height of his power.
He was at the height, wasn't he?
Yeah. And I remember Sterling used to walk around the pit lane with his shirt off.
Because he had a great. You didn't do much of that though, did you?
What?
The topless thing in the pit lane.
Well, all the time. But the thing was, because he was in the deep south, the religious deep south,
God.
and the marshals made him put his shirt back on.
Yeah.
Which of course he couldn't. But he said, "I said, I got to do what?" He said, "You can't walk around here, man, with no shirt on. It ain't Christian." So. You've got to be kidding. Old Sterling was absolutely gobsmacked when he put his shirt back on. But I mean, I remember that.
What was it like traveling with those guys? Because, you see the names, you read all the great drivers at the time. And I got lucky enough to know, like you and everyone older, but I never knew you when you were doing it.
No.
And you were like wide-eyed and open. And Sterling, I only knew him from that perspective of reflection,
right? Yeah.
Like he would talk about the old days, but when he was actually doing it, and Jim Clark was actually doing it, like Dad said, Jim Clark was a dour man, right? I mean, he was a dour Scot, and Sterling was full of life and vivaciousness.
But he didn't drink before the race, or like 24 hours, and he wouldn't have sex. Which for Sterling Moss must have
Which is
been
quite unbelievable.
was quite hard to do, I imagine. But anyway,
I think he made up for it the night after the race.
Yeah. Well, to me, it was just sort of surreal to be in a race with Sterling Moss and Jimmy Clark. Although Jimmy Clark had yet to hit his stride, but he and I actually shared a room at the Carousel Motel on A1A and on north of Daytona Beach, up near Ormond Beach. And he and I shared a room at the Carousel Motel, which is now gone. But as you say, he was a bit dour. But one day I took my shirt off and he said, "What a belly you got!" And I mean, I was like you, I was like a blooming rail. So I thought, crikey.
He said that.
Yeah.
Cheeky.
But the one time I ever saw Jimmy really laugh was while we were in this room. We were looking out the window, and there's, people drive on the beach on Daytona. Mm-hmm. Anyway, this guy got too close to sea, and he got stuck in the sea, and of course it kept coming up on his. And Jimmy Clark was just absolutely rolling just rocking with laughter. So, but it
must have been a pioneering. It must have been a liberating, pioneering spirit then, right? Like you'd go to South Africa and all, everyone racing the Tasman series. It was it more collegiate than it is now, do you think?
Much.
Yeah.
But I mean, also, like I say, we had all these receptions and nobody, and of course everybody mucked in together. I mean, the pits were just the cars coming on a trailer and you'd just unload the trailer and everybody standing around, mucking around together, drivers, mechanics or whatever. I mean, the drivers used to go out. I suppose we all used to eat together. We didn't so much socialise with the mechanics, but although a lot more than they would do now. But I mean, the thing about Jimmy, I shared this room with Jimmy, and I had been watching him since he drove an Elite as well. And I'd seen him win a few races, and then of course he started doing Formula One, and he won a few non-championship races. And then they went and did that Springbok series for Formula One cars, and he beat Sterling, also in the Lotus, at, I think it was in Rhodesia. The week before, we all went to Daytona. So I thought, my hero, Sterling, was beaten by this guy, so this guy must be pretty damn good, which of course he was. I mean,
he really went on. Did you keep a friendship until he died?
No, we used to see each other going to races, like when I'd be doing Formula Junior at Reims and he'd be doing the Formula One car, we'd chat in the paddock and that sort of thing. And he was going out with Sally Stokes, who lived in Wolverhampton.
Well, who?
Still around.
No, it gets better. My girlfriend, Marlani, she's a farrier in LA, and she said, I've got this client, Sally Swart. And she said she used to date some big-time race car driver, Ed Swart's wife. Yeah, and I said it to Dad, and he went, that was Jim Clark's girlfriend. Yeah. And so I saw her with Mum last week.
Oh, did you?
And Mum hasn't seen her, because I get on the phone with Sally, and she's going, oh, yeah, how's your Auntie Val, my mum's sister, and Ashby de Lazouche? And I'm going, who are you? Yeah. I mean, how do you know everybody? So I went and saw them 2 weeks ago. She was a looker. Jeez.
She was a hell of a looker.
Jeez, I saw the
photo. And of course, we knew her well because I was driving for Midland Racing Partnership, which was based in Wolverhampton, because it was all those guys from Wolverhampton. Yeah. Richard Atwood, David Baker.
It was like a group, right? Like she talked about it. It's like
and she was part of that group. God. And then Jimmy was going out. So that's why we would see a bit of Jimmy in those early days. And then, of course, he hit the big time. And unlike a lot of drivers, I don't think it swelled his head particularly. But the problem is, when you become a really big-time driver like he was, your circumstances just change the way you live. However you want to. No, I want to go and see the old guy. I want to go down the pub on Friday night. I don't want to. But no, you've got to go and have dinner with Ronnie Hoare, or you've got to go and have dinner with a sponsor. It all changes around you, and you have to change with it. Because and that's where Jackie's shirt was absolutely brilliant. I mean, he just fell right into that stuff straight away, and always cultivated the top people at all stages.
Who for you was the? Because I'm just thinking about what you said about Jackie. Jackie was like the first professional. I mean, Sterling was the first professional, wasn't he, in a way? And then, but who, when you watched them on track, were you like, on track? Who was the one you went, fuck me, I cannot do that? Or who was the one who was that guy?
Well, obviously, both Jimmy and Sterling would fall into that.
Yeah.
I would look at people like Innes Ireland and I'd think, well, I could probably go as quick as him. But those guys were, and of course Senna was the other one, who was pretty amazing. Looking back on it, I mean, to be honest, in this day and age, Senna would have been banned. I mean, the things he pulled off, especially that stunt with Prost.
Yeah.
I mean, he would have been banned instantly from racing again. And now he's everybody's hero, including Lewis Hamilton, who I think is. I mean, I know everybody says, "Oh, he had the best car, had the best blah blah," but Lewis Hamilton to me is unfucking canny. I mean, how many times have you seen Lewis Hamilton spin off in a race?
Yeah.
I mean, every now and then on a Friday, he'll have a
Push
go
to the
and
edge,
just push it to see where the limit is. You know, everybody's so frantic about Gilles Villeneuve because, oh boy, he used to push and push and push. Then anybody would spin, he'd say, oh, well, that's it then. And he'd spin like 4 or 5 times on every Friday, and then he'd crash here and crash there. And everybody thought he'd brilliant. He won about 4 or 5 races total. But Lewis Hamilton is, he's like a bloody machine. I mean, he's driving.
He does things, right? You watch the races. I think if you were in Toto's position, Wolf's position, to know actually what he's doing, or his engineer compared to what the car can do, I think he's one of those drivers, right, that can just elevate his performance to overcome his car, because he does win when he shouldn't.
He does.
Or he comes from the back and he gets right up there.
So he is
unbelievable.
He is pretty unbelievable. I mean, obviously, in my career, I saw Fangio. Obviously, they're all unbelievable. And the fact is, you cannot compare them because cars are all so different. I mean, would Lewis Hamilton want to drive a Ferrari where the exhaust pipe is right by your right elbow? Yeah. The steering wheel's about 2.5 feet across, and it's got rope around it so you can grip it. And the races last 3 hours, and the tyres are about 2.5 inches across, no grip, and you've got to run for 3.5 hours in the heat. And then they put in 50 gallons right behind your head, right over the exhaust pipe.
And you will die if you crash. Yeah.
That's what's changed for me.
But I don't think, David, that raw talent, if you had Lewis or Raikkonen or Mika Hakkinen or any, they'd have been fucking great if they were driving in 1916.
Oh, of course they would. All these top drivers, and I always think that from a European point of view, Mario Andretti is very underrated. When you think what Mario's done, he wins the Daytona 500, he's won the Indy 500, which he should have won about 6 times, and he won the World Championship. Yeah. And he'd be racing on the dirt in DuQuoin, Illinois, on one Sunday. And the next Sunday, he'd win in the rain at Spa in a Formula 1 car. Now that is unbelievable.
Did you cross paths with him when he and his brother turned up here? Did you early on in America?
No, not early on. No, I didn't. No. See, I didn't really come here till the mid-'60s, by which time he was well established. Yeah. I met his brother, Aldo, and I didn't race against Mario much. Obviously, the few times I did Indy, I did. And he's a bit of a funny cove. One day he's all, hey, how you doing? And another day he walked right by and he won't even look. So he's a bit odd that way. But in terms of sheer smoothness, obviously Jimmy was and the thing about Jimmy was, he'd be on the pole alongside like Graham Hill and who else? Trevor Taylor maybe. And the flag would drop. When they came past the first time, he'd be about 2.5 seconds in front. His opening laps, of course, this is a day pre-tire
heating.
Everybody's on stone cold tires, and that's what impressed me about Jean JP Montoya at Indy. After those pit stops, he'd go bollocking off. Yeah, and his first lap out of the pits would be absolutely fucking awesome.
Gilles de Ferran says that when he said, Gilles pretty freaking good, right? Yeah. But he said Montoya's outlap
were always incredible.
He said, "Fuck, you'd spend your whole weekend trying to match what he would do coming out the pits on cold tires."
Yeah,
or,
he
slicks.
And I thought his career probably didn't end up the way it should have done. But that's happened to so many people. I mean, it's just...
Who was the most brilliant guy that we've never heard of?
Oh, my gosh.
Because you mentioned Trevor Taylor, or you've mentioned names that gone to history. No one,
I know.
There were some good people, weren't they? Just never...
There were a lot of good people. Most of the really good ones managed to make it. I think that Trevor, I mean, I raced with Trevor in a low salute at the Nürburgring in '63. And I mean, I think my lap times were slightly better than his. So I'm probably the best driver no one's ever heard of.
Well, it probably is. I was going to ask, would you exist today if you started today? Would David Hobbs exist as a driver?
No, because I wouldn't have the money to get going.
Yeah.
I mean, the money now is just, which is one of the reasons why Andrew gave up. It finally came home to him about 4 years ago when he was asked to drive an Aston Martin in a...
This is your grandson,
in a Michelin, in a Continental tour.
I was there.
And they said, it'll only cost you 40 grand for 2 hours, of which you drive for one. And the other guy, I assume, is paying 40 grand.
Yeah.
And if he would crash the car on Wednesday afternoon or Thursday, that'd be it. You'd be out 40 grand. You wouldn't even get in the car for the weekend. And I think Andrew finally clicked and said this. And of course, how much do Indy Car drivers make now, other than a handful of them?
A handful make the top, and the rest bring money, and they've got money or they have money. I mean,
it's just not.
It's the world we live in. I look at these young guys. I had someone the other day come up and was at a Ferrari event a couple of years ago, and he's there with his little son and he's wearing his little karting suit, and the dad's like, do you have any advice? Because we want him to be he really wants to be a top race car driver. And I went, are you rich? To the dad, and the dad goes, no, I'm a dentist. I said, oh, do you know rich people? And he goes, well, no. I mean, I said, are you good? I asked the kid, and the kid went, yeah, and I won. I said, are you like Kimi Räikkönen good? I mean, to be so exceptional. And he goes, well, I win some races. I said, well, that's good. I said, what racing do you want to do? I want to go to Daytona and Le Mans. He goes, well, here's the thing. If you want, I'm not bursting his bubble, and I was full of support, but I said to the dad, I said, if you want to go to Daytona and Sebring and Le Mans, you can try and be a professional racer and do it that way, and you might get there, because you can get there in some piece of shit or whatever. And I said, but guarantee, if you're smart, are you good at school? Yeah, I'm really good. And your dad's obviously smart because he's a dentist. I said, go away, get into business, make a lot of money, and you can come back and you can race any race in the world outside Formula One that you want to.
Yeah.
Basically, that's the advice. And they looked at me like, oh, I don't know what happened to him, but
well, I mean, every time they come up to me, I say, do you play golf? And they say, well, I can do. I said, well, if I was you, I'd take up golf because this is...
but why there's something about... I was thinking about it when we were just talking with Mags earlier about, the work, all this lockdown stuff and everything. And then I was thinking about what it's like living in California where there's so many regulations and stuff at the moment. And I think there is a side to racing, which is still nice when you go on track, which is the same as when you wanted to get on the track when you were a kid.
The only reason...
As in, just go fucking quickly and no one to stop you. And in fact, your whole job is to go fast.
Yeah.
And there's rules around it, but really, in my opinion, it's one of the purest things that a man or woman can do, right? You just go fucking quick.
I agree. That's what I did. If I did, I had in the back of my mind that I might make a bit more money than average. The average pay when I started was about $1,000 a year. $2,000 a year would be very good. $4,000 or $5,000 a year would be exceptional. And somebody like Sterling would make maybe $30,000 or $40,000. So you thought, that's the sort of money I'm aiming for, and I'd be doing something I really, really, really like.
Yeah.
So that was, but I mean, the main thing was, when I had a motorbike for 2 years, and Mags was on the back most of the time. How the hell we're both here is a fucking miracle. Because I used to drive that thing like there was no tomorrow. It was a 500cc Triumph Speed Twin.
Which was the improvement from the Vespa.
Which was a definite improvement from the absolute...
Talk about underpower.
Lambretta, yeah.
Lambretta.
Yeah, and I wore that out in about a year. And a friend of mine had a Tiger 100, which was an upgraded speed twin. He had the swinging arm suspension. Mine had what they call sprung hub, which had about that much, had about an inch and a half of movement. But I mean, Martin was always falling off this thing. And I mean, I never fell off once in 3 years. And Mags would be on the back and we'd be hurtling around the road at 100 mile an hour. How the fuck we weren't killed? I mean, I had a helmet on, but it was a cork helmet, so...
Would have,
of course she didn't...
Would have kept all your brains at least in one scoop, so they could have picked it up.
So, but I mean, and then I started driving Mum's Morris Oxford. I put a bigger end, I put a B series engine which had overhead valves as opposed to side valve.
This is where the engineering apprentice stuff probably helped out.
Well, it helped a bit,
right?
Because
my dad wouldn't have known. My dad couldn't have. He was capable of putting wheels on.
But I used to steal stuff from David as well, so I had a
little inventory,
carburetors and things like that. So they were going to make a thing called the Sentry. They had the Daimler Conquest. Then they were going to make a car called the Sentry, which was a Conquest with twin SU carbs. And they had this storeroom at the back of the Daimler factory in Radford Road, Coventry, and they had about 10,000 sets of twin carburetors because they never made the Sentry in any. So I think I bought these things for about $3 or something, you know. I mean, but they had thousands of them in there, and I put those on the Morris. But I mean, the Morris, in the best way in the world, probably had, I mean, maybe 70 horsepower, probably not.
Thrashed it.
So I used to drive that around, and we went off the road a couple of times in that. And
it's actually, like a rite of passage.
I remember we were going to Silverstone once. I had me and Mags, her friend Jane, who I mentioned, who was our bridesmaid. In the back of the car was Paul, her brother, Paul Young, a chap called Dickie Stewart, who came from Jamaica, and his father was a big Jaguar Daimler dealer. And Dickie Stewart was in the back, Paul was in the back, and a chap called Bob Moran from also Apprentice. So there's 6 of us in this car, because I had bench front seat.
Yeah.
And we were going on the back road from Leamington to Silverstone, what they call the Welsh Road. It's a little twisty lane.
Yeah.
I mean,
I visualise it.
And we were going to this village called Preston Cape. And I had overtaken a whole bunch of cars in this car.
Probably slightly obnoxiously.
Very obnoxiously. I mean, this is a road that's only wide enough for one car going one direction, as long as you both move over and make plenty of room. And I'm passing people going the same way as me. And there's tons of cars on this road going to Silverstone. I pass, 10, 12 cars, you know. Then going through Preston Capes, there's an S-bend leaving Preston Capes, in which I spun, dropped it into the hedge. So we're trying to push it out, it doesn't work. And of course these people are going by, yeah, you stupid twat, you know, and all that.
Exactly.
You know. So the farmer comes out, this tractor pulls us out, all pile back in, off we go again. And pass a few more on the way to Silverstone.
Same people.
And about 20 years later, I was speaking somewhere. It might have been 30 years later. I was speaking somewhere. And some bloke said, I remember you, he said. You passed me on the way to Silverstone once on the Welsh Road. And he said, I passed you in a ditch. And I thought, well, fucking serve you right. And he said, before we got to Silverstone, you passed me again. So...
The legend lives on.
So
it's funny.
So those are the sort of things that gave me hope that
you might be all right.
Might be all right. And actually, one of the best races I ever had with anybody was on the road. I was going to Silverstone for a practice day, and to Goodwood, which was about 100 miles from Leamington, 110 miles from Leamington due south, where you had to go through Oxford and down through Henley-on-Thames and all those little villages between Henley-on-Thames, and you go not Guildford but near Guildford, and all those villages, Petworth and whatever, to get to Goodwood. And anyway, I must have passed this Hillman Minx, which then stuck to my tail like glue. Then he passed me, and I passed him again.
And you know how quick you're going. You're like, this guy knows what he's doing.
And this is the Hillman Minx, which, with the best wheel in the world, probably hadn't got as much power as Mum's Morris Oxford. I'm on Mr. X, he's on road time. Anyway, I remember following his car through the village, and I mean, his left front wheel is like 4 inches off the ground. So, I mean, he's trying. It was Mike Parks.
No.
I found out years later it was Mike Parks.
That's fabulous.
Because he used to work for Root School,
Yeah.
and he designed, you remember the Hillman Imp?
Yeah.
He was on the design team for the Hillman Imp.
God, how funny is that?
And that's one of the best races I had was with Mike Parks. He was a hero. He was a bit of a hero of mine, Mike Parks. because the one race I really wanted to win, I wanted to be Formula One, but yeah, sort of. But the one race I really wanted to win was Le Mans. Because to me, that Le Mans was just a great race. And I used to follow that every year. And when those Rodriguez brothers drove in it, one of them was not allowed to drive because he was too young. God almighty, I mean, can you imagine driving at Le Mans and all that? And eventually, at 62, of course, I did.
Was that the GT40?
That was a Lotus Elite, but not mine. It was Lotus Elite. It was a Team Elite with the white car with the green stripes. Okay. And I drove with Frank Gardner, mate. And we won the class. We won the Index of Thermal Efficiency. And we were 8th overall in this little Lotus Elite. And I mean, to me, that was just
as good as it could
magic. And it's one of the best races it's one of my best results ever at Le Mans.
Well, I was going to say, you joke about it. You joke about it, especially with Dad and his luck there and everything like that. And it's only when you actually look at your bad luck, you realise that you're not joking about your bad luck at Le Mans. It was shit.
It was terrible.
I mean, honestly, you should be up there with at least a couple of wins.
I should have at least 2 or 3.
You really should.
I mean, there's 2 or 3 that I absolutely was definitely going to win it.
Because I've heard you refer to that as a jammy bastard quite a lot during my childhood.
Oh, yes.
But he did have a touch there.
Well, I mean...
he should have won about 4 more if you... I mean, Le Mans is one of those races.
Well, look at Tom Christensen. He's done 9. He's done, 14 races, won 9 of them. Won 9 of them and been on the podium for the others or something.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, that's ridiculous. And it doesn't matter how much you push your foot around and all that sort of thing. Shit happens. And it just happened to me time and time again. The only other driver with my sort of shit luck in a race car was Chris Amon, who could have been world champion.
Totally.
Should have won at least half a dozen or more Formula One races and never won one. He would win non-championship races, but never won a Formula One World Championship race.
Not wild.
And it was very
it's like Sterling not winning a championship.
Unlike Sterling.
Yeah.
To go back to one of your questions, I'll tell you a guy who probably should have had a much better career than he did, and that was Jonathan Palmer.
Yeah.
Jonathan Palmer won the British Formula 3 race. He won like 15 out of 17 events or something. And was very quick. And in those days, F3 came and then Formula 1.
Yeah.
And he got that bloody Zach Speed thing, which was a piece of shit. And the problem with racing, I'm a big believer in the momentum theory. If you keep winning and keep doing well, you just go better and better. I mean, everybody says, when you win your first Formula 1 race, that's it. You know how to win. You've done it, been there, got a T-shirt, and you know how to win. Not that you don't know how to win on the way there, because you've already won lots of races to be able to get into Formula 1 in the first place. But Jonathan Palmer had the worst fucking luck in Formula 1. And yet you put him in that 962 with Jan Lammers, and they won everything.
I know.
Except Le Mans. So he would definitely be...
one of the could-haves.
Thank
God he was... But don't feel too sorry for him, because he's brilliant. One of the smartest businessmen connected to our industry, and he's become rich.
He was incredibly smart in the first place, because he finished... He was a doctor before he really got into Formula 3. He made sure that he got his he was a doctor. So he's got all the credentials, you're right. And the other guy, actually, is I think somebody else on your list, I hate to say this, but is Brian Redman. I mean, he's revered among Porsche owners because he won so much stuff in Porsches. But even then, he's kind of, everybody says, oh yeah, he was Siffert's co-driver. But if you look through the annals of when he and Siffert were driving together, I think Brian, of the two, was the quicker one of the two.
Shit.
And he was always relegated to Siffert, referred to kind of as the number 2 driver. But I mean, they won that Spa 1,000 kilometres 5 times. And Spa is not a track to be fooled with. And I think Brian did, but Brian and Marion have a slightly odd relationship. And I don't think all the time he was in racing, he ever quite knew whether he was Arthur or Martha. He just couldn't quite take the plunge, but I mean, he drove that Cooper Formula One car at Spa, and of course the suspension broke and pitched him over the edge and broke his arm, and fucked him up for a few months. And then he drove that McLaren at Monte Carlo in the rain as a one-off, standing in for somebody. And I mean, he left Denny Hulme for dead. And Denny
He must have been freaking quick.
Denny Hulme was a world champion.
Yeah.
And Denny apparently was absolutely fuming about it.
Really?
But I mean, the fact was that Brian dickered around behind him for a couple of 3 laps and said, fuck this, and passed him. And it wasn't in the playbook at all, not Denny Hulme's playbook. Mm. And he passed him, and I think he came 3rd or 4th behind, like Jackie Stewart, Francois Sever, and, name me another top Formula One driver at the time. And he was like 4th. Wow. He did the Spanish Grand Prix once and came 3rd. He said, but of course, everybody else crashed out. He said, but I come 3rd. Graham Hill won it. He said, we were in the car going around on the lap of victory. He said, Graham Hill sitting in the middle, I'm sitting on his right, and he looks at me and said, what the fuck are you doing here? But I think if he'd concentrated, I think he could have been a world champion easily.
Do you...
But I mean, he won a
hell of a lot of races.
But he never won them all either.
No, I know. I was just thinking about with Margaret, your wife.
Yeah.
Because you didn't know you were going to be a race car driver, really. I mean, you got married young. She was pretty girl, and you got in. But while you're running around Europe, you must be one of the only, and America, you must be the only married young drivers. I mean,
I'm the only one that remained married.
They remained married, but you look at it, it was, I mean, I apparently got some relatives that were quite liberal with their affections as they travelled around the Europe and the world. Yeah, apparently so. I don't know. Is
that right?
The book written about it.
Yeah.
But like, you were, do you think that was I mean, obviously she's been a partner and an amazing partner for 50 years or more, but 60. Shit.
Actually 67 if you count our courtship.
Wow. That's an amazing, but having someone in your corner was, because you missed out on the Playboy side of being a racing driver. It must have been happening all around you.
It was.
Right? You must have been like, I better go to bed now.
Well.
And they're all off to bed with everyone else.
I used to go out sometimes with a guy called Derek Bell, and he was...
Oh, God, funny bloke.
Yeah. And he was often too busy to talk to me. And, I mean, I spent my time at the bar, and of course I spent 6 weeks in South Africa with Mike Hailwood, which was a real wild boy.
Because he was a wild boy.
He was a real wild boy, and we became just such good friends. And after he retired from everything, and he and I and Mags and Pauline were really big pals. And then when that crashed, I mean, it was just absolutely one of the most shattering things that ever happened to me. I mean...
On the bypass, what was it?
Bypass, just around Birmingham there.
Around Birmingham.
A foreign truck driver did a U-turn on a divided highway.
And he had his kids in the car, didn't he?
And one the girl was killed instantly. And David, who was in the back, who was named after me, didn't get damaged at all. And poor old Pauline,
life was never the same.
She just died last year, and she got married again once, but she never, ever, ever lost. Mike was everything to her for, I mean, it's 40 years since Mike was killed, which I just find unreal. And she just was in love with him, infatuated by him, completely besotted by him, until she died.
And he was good. He was across the board one of those, like a Surtees, right? I mean, just like extraordinary.
He was damn quick in the car, and because he made me, he was a funny fucker. I mean, he could play the guitar, he could play the trombone, he could play the saxophone, he could dance like fucking Fred Astaire. I mean, he was an incredible bloke. And he was always terribly self-depreciative. Fucking, you start the fucking thing, I'm not going to do that, No, you're better than me, you start. And I just think, you hear of the most amazing sporting comebacks. And you hear about tennis players who suddenly come back, or golfers like Tiger Woods when he came back. And not this, the last time he came back, and everybody said it was the most amazing, and he won the Masters. Everybody said it's the most amazing sports comeback by anybody ever. Well, that's a lot of bollocks. The most amazing comeback was Mike Harewood, who had given up motorcycle racing in about 1970 and really concentrated full-time on cars. And was very quick in those cars too. And then in 76 or 77, Ducati asked him to ride their bike at the Isle of Man. He won the race, broke that record again and again and again, and won the race. And he hadn't driven a motorcycle on a racetrack for 8 years. Now that
is a comeback.
That is a most, I mean, you're not talking about racing at Silverstone here or Brands Hatch or
the most dangerous track in the world.
You're talking about the most dangerous racing circuit, 37 miles long, walls, curbs, lampposts, not a straw bale in sight. I mean,
was he excited about it when you were?
Well, because he just took it all so.
He's like, oh, fucking do it. Yeah.
Well, you know, fucking nice bike, you know.
Yeah, isn't that wild?
And it was incredible, absolutely incredible. And
was he your closest friend that got killed?
Yes.
But the worst part is it wasn't in a race.
No.
There's some sort of, even though dying in a race doesn't make it okay, at least you were doing what you were doing. To be taking your kids to get a curry or something was shit.
Just awful. His death and Michael Schumacher, who might as well be dead, to me are two of the most ironic things that could ever happen to a sportsman. I mean, you just can't get your head around the fact that Michael Schumacher won the World Championship 7 times, won whatever it was, 80 races or 70 races, and fucking skiing with his kid. And he wasn't even going fast. I gathered he went to pick somebody else up who'd fallen down or something. He's just gliding along at 0, and his ski hits that rock, and he just dives off the fucking rock and hits his head on the floor, and he's a vegetable. I mean...
Did you see the documentary on him?
I haven't, no.
It's interesting because, obviously, it's right like watching the Senna documentary. We know what happened. I mean, I'm watching Damon behind... I mean, you're waiting, and you know he goes off, right? And it's like... I remember the brilliance of the Senna documentary, just going away from Schumacher a minute, is I was watching it, knowing the outcome, but desperately hoping it wasn't going to happen because it was so well made, and then of course it goes off. Same with Schumacher, but I knew the end, so I know he's in a room at the end of the corridor, which must be fucking weird for everyone involved. You know, Christmas dinner. What do they all sit there? Do they go down and have a drink with him? Or does he? I mean, I'm sure there's a big TV that plays every Grand Prix session, right? So we can watch Mick. But it actually creeps me out. But my girlfriend watched it without me, and she said she didn't know he wasn't dead until the end.
Oh,
because she didn't know anything about him. No. So she was watching it on her own at home, and she said it wasn't until literally John Todd made some reference to it. You're like, she's like, that is creepy, and like, oh my god,
it's awful.
It is awful.
But I tell you, that terrible things happen to people, and one of the other ones that just got me right in the heart was, you remember Beltoise?
Yeah,
a good driver, and did he have a couple of Grand Prix wins?
I think he did. Yeah,
close,
maybe one.
And I remember he was at a race, and his wife got killed in a car crash. This is all like 40 years ago. And that just hit me right in the heart. And I thought, how just absolutely kind of, what?
Yeah.
And it's a bit like John Surtees and his son that got killed in that race.
I don't think
John
the math
Surtees ever got over it.
He never did.
No.
I think one of my problems of why I wasn't ultimately as good as I was fast, but as good as I could have been, was I had too much imagination. I think if you have too much imagination, I can imagine that tire bouncing and going, that's fucking, I'm dead. You know what I mean? I can imagine going over the wall, the barrier at Le Mans. I can. So it always was a bit of a problem. But so these accidents just do.
I mean,
I mean, I mean, it's littered with them. But like your era was horrific.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
horrific.
I mean, 1968, Jimmy Clark, didn't he win the World Championship 67? But anyway, 68 got off to a great start. And then he's killed in that Formula 2 race at...
Dad was there, had breakfast with him that morning.
Dad was there, exactly. And I was driving with Paul Hawkins in the BREC 1000 brands.
Yeah.
And I started, and then Paul got in, and I'm wandering around I went round the back to look at clearways. And some guy came to me and said, "Do you hear about Jimmy?" I said, "What? What about Jimmy?" He said, "He's dead." And I mean, the bottom dropped out of my world. I couldn't believe it. So I went off to his funeral at the Scottish Church in Sloane Square. And I was there with Mike Spence, who was a very close rival of mine. I mean, he got a driver's Lotus, which I had wanted, but Colin Chapman preferred Spence. And we're there, and we're both at the back of the church. There's so many eulogies written by so many people, like Nick Siret, from the BRSCC, and it's all incredibly moving. And meanwhile, all of us are thinking, fuck, if Jimmy Clark can get killed, I mean, because in those days, you only did it, you're like a World War II fighter pilot.
Yeah.
You knew you were going to get killed if anything went wrong. But you always just said, well, it ain't going to happen to me. Mm. And that's the only thing you had hung on to, was this, well, it won't happen to me. Now, what makes you think that? I mean, so when Jimmy gets killed, you thought, Christ, well, maybe it could happen to me. So I'm there with Mike Spencer at the back of the church, and we're all sniffly and tearful, and, I saw him on the steps, and, 2 weeks later, I'm at Mike Spencer's funeral, because he went to Indianapolis instead of Jimmy and got killed about the first day he was there.
Fuck.
Same thing, he clipped the wall and the tyre came back to him on the head.
Fuck.
So that's Jimmy, that's him, that's his funeral.
That was hard to take home though, wasn't it? It's hard to convince the missus that this is really all good. It's still...
Well, I have to say about Mags, she has been an absolute rock the whole time. She has never once held, do you want this to happen to me? Do you want me to be left a widow? Do you want the boys to not have a father? She never, ever said anything like that. It was me that castigated myself all the time. I'm the one that kept saying, should I be doing this? Because it is freaking dangerous. And I'm not sure whether I should be doing this, but it was the only way I could make money at the time. And I just, Christ, it was tough. But every time I went out of home, like on Hill Farmhouse on Frog Lane, I'd look in the mirror and they'd be all standing out waving to me. I think, I wonder if that's the last time I'll ever see them. And she must have been such. She must have been thinking exactly the same thing. Is that the last time I'm ever going to see him? So it was tough because about 3 weeks later, Scarfiotti was killed during a hill climb, and a month later, Joe Slesser was killed at Rouen driving the Honda, which was made of magnesium and burnt to a pile of ash, including him, on the side of the road. Because in those days, they said the yellow flag for a couple of laps and you just carried on racing right past the fire, just burnt at the side of the track and you just kept going.
And you're like, I hope he got out.
Well, exactly.
Like,
so then we had, 1, 2, 3, 4
4 in 6 weeks?
About 6 weeks.
Shit.
Yeah.
So did that make you, because I asked Dad this when I was interviewing him, when Greg goes and says, Dad, I've got a great idea. Thanks for the good schooling and all that, but I'd like to try my hand at racing.
Yeah.
It's not the words you really are desperate to hear, is it? No.
It has changed unbelievably over the years in terms of risk, reward, because now the rewards are huge, which is why so many kids like your kid came up to you with his go-kart jacket on and said, I want to be a racing driver, because they see people like Lewis Hamilton and Alonso who are making millions and millions and millions of dollars, and they've got rich fathers who are prepared to spend millions. Greg was when Andrew was racing go-karts, they were up against fathers who bought their kids in a truck, a Formula One race truck, with a Formula One ex-race mechanic or an ex-Indy Car mechanic looking after the kid's car, and they'd put new tyres on for every practice, every qualifying, and every race.
Couldn't do it.
And a new engine. And I mean, Greg racing with tyres of a year old, an engine and cart's about 3 years old,
Yeah.
and it's hard to match. And because so these guys are spending a couple of $100,000 a year on go-kart fucking racing.
And we know that there is a Lewis and there is an Alonso, but it's not like there's a lot of jobs. It's not basketball with 40 people on the roster of every team.
No.
Right?
No.
I mean, sports car drivers, you stay there for fucking years. I mean, if you're good.
Well, the only thing about racing now is sports car races actually do make some money, don't they?
They make and look, right now we're heading to this. I mean, I think it's the heyday right now of sports car racing. We're about to have it since the 80s probably, and there's so many drives for the top drivers. There's global alignment on it. So I mean,
that's good.
I think next year you're going to see. I've told everyone, including Michelin, who my sponsors on the other talk show. I'm like, and I told John Doonan, president of IMSA, I said, you need to gear up, because I think the next 2023, for say 3 to 5 years before it fucks itself up like it always does, right?
Yeah,
is going to be the last heyday when it doesn't.
I think you're right.
So when I started TV.
Yeah.
And I was doing it. I remember, and you were the guy on our broadcasts and things. And I remember it was funny for me because I came in and I was still racing, and I got to do like Le Mans, Daytona with you guys and things. You were the guy I wanted to be, because you seemed to be the one that didn't fit the box on what they expected from you, and I don't think I ever fit the box, which is probably why I don't have a job. But seemed like you had a good time every time you did it, and there's a whole generation of people, I guess that's why the book was so important, that don't think of you as the driver. They just think of 30-year television career and more. You must have, the TV was totally unplanned, right? And suddenly it happened, and it created your livelihood.
Well, it all started with Rod Campbell, because he used to take me and Sam on the road.
Yeah.
So, and I was a good interview. I'm always funny.
Interviewee. You were funny.
Yeah, funny. And as Mag said, you got to put humour into it. She'd say before I went off to do the NBC broadcast, she said, don't forget, you got to be funny.
Yeah.
So I was always, and I didn't mind calling a spade a shovel. Yeah. When somebody did something stupid, I'd say they'd done something stupid, or I wouldn't try to overtake the air, or whatever it was. And it brought me a certain amount of notoriety as a slightly off-the-wall character. And my first TV interview to get the job, Ken Swire was the play-by-play for CBS back in the 70s. And Graham Hill was going to be his co-commentator for Formula One race in 1977. Well, of course, he got killed in 1976, end of 76. So Ken says to me, why don't you try and... I said, I think you'd be good. He said, why don't you try and get a job with CBS? So I went for my interview at CBS at the 57th Street on about the 33rd floor. So I got my blazer, my tie on and all that kit. And I go out and I'm interviewed by this bloke called Clarence Cross, who was the vice president of sports at CBS, which was big in sports then. So anyway, this interview just was appalling. So what do you do? I said, well, I drive, I'm a Formula 5000 champion. What's Formula 5000? Well, it's like Formula 1, but it's a stock block engine. Oh yeah, okay. Have you ever been to Indianapolis? Yes, I've been to Indianapolis. Did you finish? I said, yeah, I came fifth. Oh, okay, fifth. And I mean, the sweat's running down my back, and I'm just getting...
There's no connection here, yeah.
This guy knew dick about racing. When I left, I mean, he shook my hand. He said, well, we'll talk again later. I said, but if ever there was a don't call us, we'll call you. That was it. So that was in about October 77. Well, now, I've always said you've got to have a certain amount of luck in everything you do. You haven't got to be... You've got to be lucky to win a world championship. You've got to be lucky to win Le Mans, especially 5 times. And don't know who you're talking about there, but anyway, a friend of mine had got me some Coca-Cola sponsorship for the BMW team for the 76 Daytona 24-hour race, and also for Benny Parsons. So I had a deal that I was going to go to Daytona, do the 24-hour race with the BMW team, who were going to be then the IMSA team, and it was going to be run by Peter Gregg, who had dropped Porsche to run this for Jochen Neerplein. So Benny Parsons and I are going to drive one car, and then I'm going to drive Benny Parsons' car, backup car, in the 500, both of which had Coke sponsorship on them. So off I go. Well, it was the year of the water and the fuel, and I mean, Brian and John Fitzpatrick and Peter Gregg win it. Peter Gregg did about 4 laps. We came 10th because we just couldn't get the water out of our system. So then I wait around in Daytona for the Daytona 500. Well, Ken Squire had a radio show at the Hawaiian Inn on the beach, which is a real flea pit, and he'd go on, and these Hawaiian girls would go, "Ooh, let it be, hey, this is Ken Squire, welcome to the world of motorsport," and it would run for a week before the 500. Well, Ken had been on and on at CBS for years. You've got to do NASCAR. NASCAR is the coming thing. This has got to be where you've got to be at, NASCAR. You've got to do NASCAR, got to do NASCAR. So finally, Clarence Cross comes down to see a NASCAR, the Daytona 500, and brings his wife with him. Well, as it's February, late January, early February in New York, and as opposed to Daytona, they come down for a few days R&R before they watch the 500. Well, Ken had asked me to be on this radio show, and Clarence and his wife are there. We're all sitting around a table, and then I'd had about 2 or 3 gin and tonics, so I'm just
ready to go,
right on the top of the can. And it's all the NASCAR drivers. Richard Petty was there, Cale Yarborough, both Allison brothers, Donnie and Bobby, and they were all there. Everybody was there. So I aim at them. So I take the piss out of all these guys. I mean, they're all rolling, and I'm talking in my southern accent. They're all rolling around the floor laughing, and Ken's laughing, and I'm laughing. And it was about 10 minutes, I suppose. So I go back to sit at the table. I was sitting next to Clarence Cross's wife. And she said, "You shouldn't be driving race cars." She said, "You should be on the stage." I said, "Well, don't tell me, tell him."
Yeah.
And so Clarence Cross says, "Well, yeah, I see another side of you now as opposed to our interview. And well, maybe we'd be able to fit in somewhere." So I kept ringing him all through the year, and, well, I haven't got any yet, blah, blah, blah. Then finally I rang him, and he said, "Well, how would you like to do the Pocono 500 IndyCar race?" I said, he said, because we were going to have, an incredibly dry guy who would have been awful. But he wanted to drive in a race. So I'm going from Atlanta, which is where I used to hang out in Atlanta, which was capital of IMSA, still is really. And I was going to go back to England. And of course, you had to fly from Atlanta to New York, and New York to London. Well, of course, this is the day before, long before all this security shit. So, I had about 3 hours between flights. So I just jump in a taxi, go down to CBS building, go up to 50, and I speak to Clarence. I speak to his boss, whose name I can't remember. And he said, "Well, be funny, be concise, and don't talk down to people, and don't do this and do that and do the other, and listen to what Ken is saying, and good fucking luck." So so then they fly me back about 2 weeks later, first class, pay me $75 a day per diem, which you can't even get now.
No, you don't get now.
And we're off to go to Pocono, and we have the opening on the roof. And the cameraman's going, back a bit, back up on the roof. I hate heights, and now get right on the edge of this fucking roof. So we do our opening and then do the race, and Al Unser won it. And it was the first win for a Cosworth engine in IndyCar. So it was a fairly auspicious occasion. So we do our opening, we do the race, and of course, they send me back to England. And of course, I ring a couple of days later. "Well, how was that? Oh, it's fine. It's okay. Oh, okay. I don't know about that. Any other races? I don't know." And then about 3 days later, the phone goes, "Hey, is this David?" "Yeah." It's Will Smith or something. I'm Clarence Cross's right-hand man. He said, "How would you like to do the IndyCar race at Trenton next week?" "Great. Ticket, first class ticket, go to Trenton, do the race." And I never missed a race with CBS from then until I left in 1995. So that was 19 years.
Jeez.
And of course, it was a fortunate time to be at CBS because in the end, the Clarence Cross and the powers that be decided they would do NASCAR. And their very first race was the 1979 Daytona 500, which of course was a fairy tale for them and a fairy tale for NASCAR. I don't think NASCAR should pay Ken a pension of about $1 million a year. He's made them more money because the race was okay, but Cale Yarborough and Donnie Allison had it wrapped up, and they're both in Chevs, and they're right out in front. And they're humming around, we're chatting away from the booth. Well, of course, on the last lap, I honestly can't remember who made the move on who, but whoever was second tried to, and the guy pushed him down onto the dirt. And the next thing is they both crash into each other and spin off on turn 3, hit the wall on the last but one turn. Yeah. Spin off, come down to the apron, and they both get out of their cars, and they're starting to hammer.
That fight started, didn't it?
The fight started. So then Richard Petty comes around from a very distant third and wins, which is about his 6th or 7th Daytona 500 win. So the crowd go mad because they're all Richard Petty fans. Meanwhile, these two guys are still fighting at turn 3. Bobby Allison, who probably came 2nd or 3rd, he pulls around there, gets out of his car, and he joins in the fight. Because Cale Yarborough had the most incredible comb over. And of course, when he starts fighting, he comes unglued from here, and his hair waving around out here, and he's fighting, and they're getting their helmets off and hitting each other with the helmets.
Nowadays, they'd pull the cameras away, but you were fully privy to this.
Ken was just about to have an orgasm, and I mean, it was perfect.
Genius TV.
It put NASCAR right on the map because it coincided with some huge sort of snowstorm all across the Northeast from Chicago to New York. So they had an audience of about 6 million. They were thinking they'd get about 500,000.
Oh my God.
They had this huge audience. So suddenly, wow, this is what we're going to do. And so we did, and then we did a real mix. I was doing the IndyCar. They did IndyCar races, a few IndyCar races. Didn't do the Indy 500. ABC had that wrapped up. But they did a few IndyCar races, and we did a few Formula One. In 1976, one of my next races, when I first started, I think the first race was at Pocono, and the second one was Trenton, and the third one was the Formula One race from Watkins Glen. And they'd used Dan Gurney a couple of times before, but they used me, and that was a pretty good race. And as I say, I never missed a race from them. Then they cut back on the NASCAR, and they just did 3. They did the Daytona 500, the Michigan 500, and Talladega 500. And
what a thing that your career should do that, because I always say to people that TV was, did you miss driving? And I'm like, well, actually, TV gives you the same buzz.
Without all the heat.
Without all the...
You're not getting sweaty and hot.
No. And
no danger.
And no danger. I love, for me it was... But also the camaraderie of everybody. Those times like when we went to Le Mans and, as a group, it was just so fun. And everyone's over there, other than your hearing that... I heard that thump when we were in that fucking restaurant in the bar, and you say, I'm going to go...
You were outside. We were all outside, and as I went in, it went from bright light to dark, and I'm looking over my shoulder at you guys, and I went down that step.
You went down that step. Your face was such a mess.
I hit the head on the carpet, and it nearly ripped this eyebrow off.
And it was messy.
Anyway.
But of course, the trouble is, such as your reputation preceding you, that when David's fallen over, we're like, oh, fuck it. Well, that's... What makes this weekend special? and then we were like, oh my God, there's blood everywhere, and Jesus. But yeah, that was a fun weekend. But it was, in a way, what I liked about it was as racing had got more serious and professional, and the drivers weren't in some ways having as much fun. There's still always fun. Drivers do have fun. But the TV for me was like the family of everybody that I'd never really had in racing. I thought it was just the best time I'd ever had for 10 years.
It was, and then because I worked for CBS, and but they cut back to 3 races, so 3 I was telling you about. So in about 1984, I rang ESPN, and Terry Lingner answered the phone because he was a head mucky muck at ESPN. And I said, David Hobbs. He said, David Hobbs? Wow. He said, what are you calling us about? And I said, well, I'm wondering if there's anything I can do for you, any races, because you. He said, you're a TV, you're a network star. I said, what do you want to be working for us for? And I said, well, do you do a lot of races? You do Formula Atlantic and you do Trans Am and other stuff. And well, he said, he said, we'd love to have you on board.
Wow.
You better check with CBS first. And I checked with CBS and they said, ESPN, they won't last 5 minutes, yeah, sure, go ahead. So I started working for ESPN in 1984. And I left them again in 96. I left CBS and ESPN at the end of 95 because in 96, Roger Warner and Bob Scanlon had come up with Speed Vision. And they said, we'll pay you some real money. And they paid me $160,000 a year, which I'd never been paid before or since. Well, I have since, but for me, that was huge money. And Sam and I were the first two on-camera talent. But so I went to, and my very first race with ESPN was the IMSA race at St. Pete. I think it's a different circuit to what they use now.
Yeah.
And of course, my co-commentator was Bob Varsha.
So that's when you met Bob? That's going to be my next question, actually.
And I worked with Bob then for, nearly 20 years.
And the voices
it was 20 years.
It was 20 years. The voices of Formula One, and you two were so good.
We had, and then of course in 87, I think it was, we got Formula One. I was Formula One with ESPN, and my very first Formula One race, was Brazil with Chris Economaki. And of course, Chris Economaki to me was another hero. He was the doyen of race broadcasting in America, even more so than Ken.
David.
Our first race, our booth is right at the top of this fucking awful grandstand. And we were right up on the roof of this grandstand, not on the roof, under the roof, in a sort of booth thing. And I said, I got to have a bottle. And the co-producer was Terry Lingler's best right-hand man. And he said, why? He said, I ain't going down them fucking stairs to go for a piss, and I'm not pissing in my pants. So we had to find him a bottle. Then the guy was trying to get the Comprex machine, whatever that is. It's something that allied with the ESPN network up in New York, or in Bristol, Connecticut. And, oh my God, and this guy that was our producer, for God's sake, I know him ever so well, lovely guy. And he was screaming at this Brazilian guy kneeling on the floor around this machine trying to make it connect to Bristol. And he said, get that fucking thing up, we're a minute to air.
There was so much pressure in
we're
those
down 10 minutes to air, 10 seconds to air, 15 seconds to air, 10 seconds to air. Fuck, get that thing. And it finally clicked and that. And I think that was Nigel's first race with Ferrari, which he won. And he won it. We had a lot of fun.
A lot of fun. What was one of my favourite people is obviously Lee Diffie. So when you guys started doing that with Match It, and it became like the Three Musketeers, didn't it? It was
me and
brilliant.
Bob, Match It joined in. It'll be 96. So it'll be 96 or 97. Well, no, I started working there in 96. It'll be 97 or 98. Then old Roger Warner picked up everything. And he got Formula One back from ESPN because he had been with ESPN when they started, and he did the first deal with Bernie for Formula One with ESPN. Mm-hmm. Then when he opened Speed Vision, he went back to Bernie and said, hey, Bernie, you and I are old pals. Of course, Bernie stuck the knife right in the back of ESPN, and we had it.
Yeah, unbelievable.
So we come to 98 or whatever it was, and they're doing Le Mans as well, and Le Mans and Canada on the same bloody day. So Frank Wilson, who was our producer, says, hey, David, do you know this guy called Steve Massiott? I said, Steve Massiott? Never heard of him. He said, oh, God, he said he's a mechanic. He's written some wonderful books. I expect you read them. I said, no, I don't read racing books. He said, oh, my God, he's got his Mechanic's Tale. It's a fucking great book, He said, and I've emailed him a few times. He said, but I never. But he said, I got to talk to him on the phone. He said, because I got to hear his voice. You know, you got to go on radio, on TV. I got to hear what he sounds like. So anyway, and then Steve wandered on because I didn't see Steve because I was now in Le Mans with Sam. So then Steve did. Then the next week they decided to have him back to threesome with Bob, me, and Steve, and Sam. So we're all doing that, and then that went on for a bit, and then Derek Daly had been doing stuff was doing Formula One for ESPN, and suddenly Bob Scanlon said, I think we better have Derek Daly back. When he came back, and he was awful. I thought he was so loud and so obnoxious. He didn't last for long, but and meanwhile, that's right. To start with, it was Sam, me,
and Steve and Bob.
No Steve.
Oh, okay.
Then when Steve came on board, it was Sam, me, and Steve, and then Bob fell out with ESPN, who he'd been with for years, and he joined in. So then it became became.
It's and
Sam gradually, because by
drifted.
then he was starting to feel a bit ropey. So
when did Lee come into it then?
well, then Lee came in to stand in for Bob on a couple of races where Bob had to do other things like skiing or whatever.
Yeah.
And then at the Summer Olympics in London, Lee's manager, because NBC do all those Olympics, have done for years, and anyway, he got with Sam Flood and said, look, you know, if you ever do Formula One, you got to have Lee Diffie. So, and that's how Bob had a contract with Fox, which didn't expire for another year or two, even though Fox were losing more and more and more racing, except NASCAR. So Lee aced out Bob there. And, you know, I loved working with Lee. I mean, he's great.
He was, and those little shows you guys do.
Yeah.
He's fucking funny, though. He's good value.
He's good value. And he like Bob. I mean,
memory, recall.
Oh, my God. They read a press release at Daytona, you know, when the press room, there's all those press releases about practices.
Yeah.
I read it. I take him up to the booth with me, well, of course, it's hopeless because you can't look through it. Lee reads it once. Okay, this is the 57th race. This is their 77th appearance. This is the driver's 9th appearance. Blah, you know, all that, and he got it right there all the time.
I remember Dad saying, like when he did the Formula One, those times with when he did the Formula One for a while with Bob, he said you'd be standing there, you know, it would be okay, 3, 2, 1, go, and they'd roll the open, and then Bob would do this monologue for 30 seconds on as the sun glints off the buildings on the Chrysler Tower, as the, you know, and Dad's like looking. He said, "I'm looking for where he's written it down." So and he just has that amazing ability with no with no with no nothing. Just it's unbelievable. Yeah,
those presenters, the good ones,
they earn their money.
Brilliant.
They are brilliant.
Yeah, they are very good.
Yeah,
Bob.
I remember. I remember sometimes they'd be like throw to break, and I'd be so concerned about that last 5 seconds, you know, and they would take it all in their stride. You're trying to get it all in, and they would do it. No, brilliant.
Yeah.
So before we go, because you know we talked for an hour and 42 minutes.
I know. Because it's 2 o'clock.
I know, amazing.
Tea time, nearly tea time.
This is like this was the whole point of this little series, is just to like talk about things that come to mind with no real agenda on it. But as you look at our racing now, what's going on in you know, fans, the way they look at the racing with social media, with, you know, we live in a very engaged world right now. Everybody is so connected. You lived your memories of your racing career were in an era when there was none of that. You could go to South Africa, and like Dad took advantage of. No one knew where he was for 6 weeks. Sterling once said to me, I guess to ask the question, Sterling said to me, everyone said, oh, yours was the greatest generation. He said, when I started racing, he said, the generation before me told me they were the greatest generation. Yeah. Are you happy that your racing was at the era that it was?
Yes, I am. Obviously, I would like to have had some better results. But you can't have a better result than doing 30 years of racing in the most dangerous time probably ever, because engine development and tyre development took off at an amazing clip. You know, forever they'd used either Pirellis, those little narrow Pirellis like they had before the war, which appeared after the war. Then the Dunlop R5 took over, little tiny tyres. Then Firestone and Goodyear got in, and they came out with those big, wide tyres, and cornering speeds shot up, and tracks stayed just the same, and cars were just as flimsy, but a fucking lot faster. Engine development took over. They came very quick. Finally, Colin Chapman came out with that monocoque, but a pretty flimsy monocoque by modern standards, well, incredibly flimsy by modern standards. Meanwhile, speeds kept going up and up and up. And, you know, first time I go to Mossport, I'm in a Lola T70, which is a stout monocoque car with a 500 horsepower Ford engine in the back. And you go around turn one, there's that poxy little guardrail overlooking the walk, 15 feet below. Then from then on, it's all just trees and ditches. That's all it is. The Nürburgring was the same. So in my period, it was unbelievably dangerous, really, because cars, the speeds went up and up and up and up, and the tracks stayed the same, absolutely atrocious. Car construction was still very, very flimsy. Fuel was in no way separate from anything. I sat in the gas tank of my Formula Junior car because I was too tall, so I had to take the seat out, and I sat right on the tank. We put a bit of foam rubber on it. And I never got hurt. I never had the wins I wanted, but I never broke a bone. So my friend Brian Redman says, well, in that case, lad, you weren't going bloody fast enough. So maybe that's why I didn't win more races, but I don't think it is. But I'm still here talking to you 45 years later. So I suppose my racing career was pretty good. You know, I mean, at one stage I was in the top sort of 15 drivers worldwide.
Yeah.
And I never got hurt. And I'm still here today to talk about it. And I had 40 years of TV work, which was fantastic because you get the vicarious thrill of being there, right there, with no danger, and you don't get hot and sweaty, and your overalls don't get all stinky.
And when it's raining, you're not out
when
there.
It's raining, you're inside. Yeah, so I've had a lot of ways. I've had a very, very blessed career, and of course, all helped by a blessed marriage with poor old Mags, who stood by it all, and is finally coming into her own as an artist, which she wanted to do all the time, but too busy looking after kids and bringing kids up, and being the only one there because I'm away. And so
not a bad life.
I've had a pretty cool life, and health has always been really pretty good. You know, I'm on heart pills and all that shit now, but I mean, so's everybody at my age,
And at mine.
and at yours. Exactly. There you go. So,
Well,
yeah, I mean, I've had a pretty
not
blessed
bad.
life, really. Can't complain. I would like to have won Le Mans at least once or twice, and we just. So I don't want to start complaining about it now.
It's too late, and no one's listening
Exactly.
to that. We can have a drink now.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Dave.